the combined toxic burden of the spilled oil and added chemicals will cause long-term illness of a potentially large number of people. Is there a plan in place to reduce exposure risk now and taking care of the sick or incapacitated in the long run?
Well, it says will. I think when you speak to people in the U.S. government, they don't know that. I think we don't know. We actually don't know. Again, I would come back to the dispersant. The volumes are large. It's something that we don't know yet because it's never been done at that stage, but it's also not a high level of toxicity. So we just don't know. We will measure it. We will work with health officials. We already are today. We're baselining all kinds of activities around the Gulf Coast, the government is, so that we will know if it has that sort of impact. It's too early to say, but we will know. We will learn and we will respond.
This brings us full circle, in a way, to where we started, and that is trying to get a universal number, the size of the liability. There have been chemical releases and fouling of soil and water in all kinds of industries, in all kinds of places, where many of the claims don't come online until long after the initial event. And the company is still asked to assume some liability for this. When you're trying to do that and have some predictability as a business, how do you do that?
Well, I think the first level of uncertainty is being able to stop the leak, because as long as that leak's going, it in many ways is sort of an infinite problem. There's no way to stop it. So we get the leak stopped, then we clean up. There's a lot of discussions about lack of transparency on rate. I have no doubt that we will study that and give all the data that we have to everyone, and a fine will likely be assessed the company. But being able to put some range on liabilities for a company like BP to make sure that it can plan its portfolio, and we most certainly will have to sell some assets around the world to be able to make sure that we meet these commitments over time, is important, because investors need to know that the company, one, is going to do what it says it's going to do. It has a way of seeing that the company can remain strong and viable with cash flows, meet these obligations, and still grow, is a very, very careful balance. It's in no one's interest to see a company like BP not be strong enough to meet these commitments. And that's part of what I'm going to be doing in the United States. That's part of what BP's management in London will be doing, is looking at how can we meet the commitments, stay a viable business, still attract investors, get back to the point where we can pay dividends to investors. And it's an aspiration, there's no question, but come out of this half a decade from now a stronger company that people will look back and say, yeah, they did the right thing.
But even if you don't put a foot wrong from now on, aren't there going to be people in 2019 and 2023 and 2026 who come along and say, I ate fish from the Gulf, or I worked around the materials. Now I have nerve damage. Now I have liver cancer. Is there a way to make the unpredictable predictable enough so that it doesn't put a permanent brick on your business? Because your share price has been battered in these last couple of weeks.
So there's very few analogies to this, but I'll take one the American people are certainly aware of, which is the Exxon Valdez. It happened 21 years ago. Many of those claims and the suits, I think, only ended this year in terms of finality to a degree with that event. I think that this one will go on for a long time. I mean, Exxon is a strong, viable American company today. So what we need to do as a company is plan, anticipate, put funds and monies aside so we can meet those liabilities and commitments and still steer a business that can be allowed to thrive in the future. And I don't think we have any choice except try to find that right balance of meeting commitments and having a viable business.
M. Sabby writes from Oklahoma, why are the updates posted on the BP website vaguely worded? The live video feeds seem intended more to mollify than to inform in a meaningful way when there is not enough detailed, specific, concrete information about what we see there.
So What I'd say to Mr. Sabi is that if they're vague, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to people and say, you know, sharpen this up, be clear. Not sure exactly what he's referring to. We have had a camera there looking at the oil spill that's coming out of the well from the very beginning. They're done with, there's about 14 robots down there, and sometimes they move off and other ones are in place. There's maintenance that need to be done, and we've had well operations where I'm sure some very strange things are happening on the screen and people can't follow it. And we talked about that. So in the coming weeks, as we do additional things around that wellhead and change the flow, we are going to try to put in there sort of a bubbled caption of what people are seeing, how they see it. We're even talking about one of our engineers maybe having a verbal way of sort of saying, here's what's happening now, because we realize it's confusing.
I'm glad you brought up that, Cameron, because people have talked about being riveted by that image. And I'm wondering if maybe the company thought it was a good idea on day 7, 8, or 14 when you thought you were going to get control of this thing, but now in days 70, 71, and 72, it's as much a blessing as a curse that people can still see that gusher coming out of the surface of the Gulf.
And it's a good reminder for us, too. We see it, and it puts a sense of urgency in everybody. You know, the age, here we are in 2010, the insatiable appetite for information, explanation, the almost instantaneous desire for this. And knowing that, that's why we put it out there. We knew that it was going to in some ways make our life more difficult in terms of we're going to have to apply a lot of attention now to explaining what was happening, and we do. We put that out there. The video feeds originally went in the Department of Interior, Department of Energy, and Coast Guard and ourselves in the early days, and then we were asked to put feeds into certain members of Congress. We've done that, and then we've been, people have said, well, we haven't provided high resolution enough video, and we haven't always been as quick to respond on those things. But we're not hiding anything, and we do not have huge staffs of people to respond to all the information requests, but we're trying and doing the best we can with this.